Libraries and librarians in my home state of Idaho are under attack. If you haven't heard of HB 710, here we go. As of July 1st, House Bill 710, also known as the Harmful Materials and Libraries Act, is now a law affecting libraries across the state of Idaho. From legislature.idaho.gov, HB 710 amends and adds to existing law to prohibit certain materials from being promoted, given, or made available to a minor by a school or public library to provide for a cause of action, to provide for damages, and to provide for injunctive relief. So what does that mean? While nothing has technically been made illegal yet, HB 710 has made it possible that anyone can complain of a book in a public or school library, including books kept in classrooms by teachers, that they think is quote unquote harmful to minors, anyone under the age of 18, for any reason that they personally believe. Hi, I'm Terry Blass. I'm a comic book artist and writer. I'm the author of Hotel Dare, Lifetime Passes, Reptile, Who Was the Voice of the People, Cesar Chavez, and I'm the co-author of Deadweight Murder at Camp Bloom. I've made a couple videos recently about a few of my new books that are coming out this year. The first is Who Was Her Own Work of Art, Frida Kahlo. The second one is called Eat Your Heart Out. And in both of those videos, I mentioned supporting your local library if you want to read them. And I realized that I need to say a few things about who I am, where I come from, and my connection to libraries and librarians. I am a Boise, Idaho native. My entire family still lives there. I go back every summer for BCAF, the Boise Comic Arts Festival. And it's put on by the Boise Library. It's a great show. It's really fun. I suggest you check it out. But I grew up down the street from the Ada Community Library, the Victory branch. I actually volunteered there for years as a tween and a teen. I shelved books. I tested out their new computer games. This was the early 90s, so we're talking like Carmen Sandiego, you know, those kind of games. And I put together puppet shows for kids. I loved it. It was a great experience. While not a library, I worked at a Barnes & Noble in my 20s. Most of my employment was spent organizing and running the children's department, and I performed story times for kids. I believe that I performed their first ever bilingual story time at that specific location, and it was very heavily attended. I was really proud of it. In college at the Pacific Northwest College of Art, or PNCA, I had two jobs, one of which was working in the PNCA library. I came out to my sister during a shift there when the head librarian could see that I was stressed out. She told me to go call my sister and take my time. I will never forget it. It was one of the nicest things somebody had ever done for me. And I have a very special place in my heart for that librarian. My comic book career began with drawing comic book covers, doing interior pages, but my career really took off when I realized that I should focus more on writing and becoming an author. I really shouldn't have been surprised. In recent years, I have attended ALA, the American Library Association conference, several times to promote my books, most recently this past June. The reason I tell you this is because libraries and librarians mean a lot to me. They have a very special place in my heart. I saw firsthand how they served communities, how they were safe spaces for kids to learn to read, to discover new worlds through books and comics. And very recently and currently, libraries and librarians in my home state of Idaho are under attack. It specifically includes any mention of homosexuality as something that's inappropriate, which means that if there is a gay character in a book, all it takes is a complaint and the library would have to remove it. It states that if something is accessible to minors, not just given specifically to minors, but if the library doesn't have a separate, locked, and restricted area that the kid is barred from, then the library is responsible. This also means that staff under 18 would need to be fired, and that any youth volunteer, like me when I was a teenager, would no longer be allowed. Librarians are concerned that this means that any book with diversity will be complained about, meaning people of color. After a complaint has been made, the library has 30 days to evaluate the complaint and decide whether or not to move it to an area not accessible to minors. If they decide not to remove the material, then the person who placed the complaint can sue them for $250 plus uncapped fees, and that's $250 per book. This is just part of why HB 710 has been called a bounty bill. Who this really affects, besides the community at large, is small rural libraries and school districts. They do not have the budget to fight every single complaint and don't have space to create adult-only areas. Because of HB 710's language being so vague, the Donnelly Library in Idaho has now been forced to become an adults-only library, where children are no longer allowed entry unless accompanied by a signing adult. The Donnelly Library is not big enough to subdivide their space. They are about 1,024 square feet, which is about a tenth of the size of most other Idaho libraries. So you can imagine how this is affecting after-school programming for kids whose parents rely greatly on it. Other libraries have had to create and man areas where you now have to show ID to enter. Now, what I want everyone to know is that HB 710 isn't really about censorship or protecting the children, as the conservative right is crying about here. If it's about protecting children from seeing material that could be harmful to them, then why does your child have a cell phone in their pocket? If your child is alone in a library with a cell phone that they can look up anything they want on, then anything that's in the library is the least of your concern. Furthermore, if your concern is protecting children in libraries and schools, then get rid of all the guns. Explain to me how seeing a book with a gay character in it that shows no sexual content, or how seeing a book that a child shouldn't see with explicit content is worse than getting blown away by an assault weapon. A painful death sounds way worse to me. I'd also like to know why it is a librarian's job to parent your child. That's not their job. I said this before in a previous video, but I think it needs to be said again. If you don't trust that librarians and teachers are smart enough to know not to expose a child to something inappropriate, then the real problem you have is that you are just very scared that anything in your small life could change in any way. So, what is this really about then? In my opinion, it's about trying to control the narrative because they are scared. It's about trying to erase and avoid discussions about sexuality, race, gender, or any other topic that a conservative parent with issues surrounding those topics is afraid to talk to their child about because they themselves don't understand them. I firmly believe that if someone is willing to have a discussion and listen, then yes, fight for what's right, present your argument, listen to their side, do all the things. But if someone is yelling at you, not willing to budge even 1%, or consider someone else's opinion, you can't fight that. The only thing to do is support the side that you're on. So, here's what I suggest we do. 1. If you're an author, and I know plenty of you in my life who are, I suggest joining Authors Against Book Bans, signing up for their newsletter, and volunteering your time. I myself have already joined. 2. Volunteer at your local library. Know which branches are closest to you and ask them what they need. 3. Donate to your local library. If you can't donate money, donate books, donate your time, whatever you can. 4. If you live in the state of Idaho, vote. If you don't live in the state of Idaho, remind someone who does to vote. Also, make yourself aware of what's happening in your local library so that this doesn't happen and spread. 5. Follow someone who is doing regular updates about this. I suggest Katie M. Reads on Instagram, who I got some great information from. I also want to thank a librarian friend of mine who was helping me find information, but I won't be giving you their name because I don't want some conservative nutso to come for their library, which coincidentally, I used to heavily attend. 6. Support books with characters and stories about queer people and people of color. And by support, I mean purchase or talk about, post about the book on social media, recommend the book to a friend, do whatever you can. 7. Support the Boise Comic Arts Festival. This year, it returns for its 12th year, and it happens August 23rd to the 25th. There's even a Librarians and Educators Day. It's really fun. I suggest you check it out. Go to boisepubliclibrary.org for more information. As you can imagine, being a Mexican-American gay author from Boise, Idaho, whose books are all middle grade or teen, and all feature people of color and queer characters, this is a topic very close to me. If I'm being honest, sometimes I'm very proud to be from Idaho, and sometimes I'm not. It would be really nice to be proud of where I'm from all the time.